to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now this time we will add Tim Drake Robin to the collection. Now this was a gold label exclusive, I think from Amazon. I did end up pre-ordering 2 of these months ago, and I have just barely gotten around to taking a look at them. Now he did come with a couple of backdraws and things that a lot of people disliked about this figure, but there are things that I liked and things I didn't like, so we will go ahead and take a closer look at that. Now he does look like a self-made hero in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. But first, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Now these are not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with his data file card. On the front you do have some sort of source material, and on the back you do have some information. Now taking a look again at the image on the front, you could look it up online and there are just tons of different versions of this red suited Tim Drake Robin. There's some with like heavy boots, some with lighter boots, some with gauntlet gloves. I mean, there's just tons of different versions that you do not know what this actually references, and the figure ended up being like an amalgamy of all kinds of stuff. But it is what we have come to expect from McFarlane, which is you never know what to expect. I do appreciate another Batman family member and another version of Tim Drake to put up on the shelf, so we will add this to the collection. Now he does come with some accessories. He does come with a Batarang, but it's more like a Robin Orang because it's more bird-like, even though it is black. But it still has that bat motif, but at the same time is a little bit more wing-like. So pretty cool little Batarang to add to the collection. And then of course he always, as usual, comes with a bow staff. This is, a long-running theme with Robin is he prefers to use a bow staff, especially the Tim Drake version. It does have some cool sculpt detail, pretty stiff, not too soft, but you can see where it can be pliable. Just add some heat to it and straighten it out, but it looks pretty good. It's not just a simple stick. It does have little sculpted out details, so that is always appreciated. Now, as I said before, I did get 2 of these, so I do have one to keep in my mint-in box DC Multiverse collection. And actually, these are kind of rare now. Online, I think you're looking at least 60, maybe even $80 to pick one of these up, which is a shame because I'd like to get one more, but I have one open and one in box, so I cannot complain. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. Now, first impressions, really nice idea of a figure. I mean, they made him a more adolescent size to give that youthful appearance, but at the same time, he does have some cool musculature. Now, like I said before, this is different parts of different versions of the suit, and you just don't know necessarily what this comes from. But in a long shot, it is Tim Drake. It is a version of Robin, and it is a version where he wears all red. Now usually this is more of like a skin tight, sleek costume, and of course McFarlane added tons of sculpted detail that usually wouldn't be in here. So you could take it either of 2 ways. You could either take it where it makes it interesting and makes it more realistic, or you could take it where he ruined it and it should have just been a smooth body. But this is in reality, this is the figure that we received. So you either want it or you don't want it. And I, for one, am happy to add it to the collection. But first impressions, I mean, like I said, it is a standard Tim Drake figure. All in all, I'm happy to add him to the collection, but there is some things I do not like and some things that I thought were pretty interesting. It ended up growing on me as per usual. But let's take a look at the head sculpt. Now, right away when I looked at this, one thing I noticed is that the eyes are real wide open, which is something I kind of do not like in characters. So that's something I looked at to change, you know, when I did a little bit of customization on this guy. My mask was a little bit off. You could tell where they didn't follow the line of the domino mask, which is not a big deal. I can fix that as well. Not really any skin tones or anything besides on the lips. So I also added a little bit of pink there when I did my little, when I added my own details. Nicely sculpted hair, kind of free flowing, pretty cool. Has that youthful feel to it. So all in all, really nice head sculpt. Just some little details that I would rather have different. Let's take a look at the articulation. Now he does look down pretty good. And surprisingly, he looks up really well. And this is without even modding him. So this is awesome that he could look basically straight up, which I was really happy to see. Now you do get right to left. And then of course you can tilt his head for some character. Pretty nice. Now coming down to the chest, here's where the weird things begin, which is this oval on the chest plate is for a different version of Robin, but they went ahead and put just a circular R, which, I mean, it's just a detail that, it's weird because he'll have detail where you don't need it, but then the simple details, he just like overlooks them. But I do think that this kind of shows us the good and the bad of having a mass market DC line that's like retail everywhere and is at its cheapest form, is that sometimes they get kind of lazy and don't go all the way with it. And then sometimes they actually do stuff that's pretty awesome that you don't really expect. So you got to take the good with the bad and just remember that this is a mass retail line that ships all over the world and is still at a reasonable price. I mean, I've still been picking up $20 figures at Walmart, so I mean, nothing has changed for me. And online, sometimes they're even $19.99, so that's pretty awesome. But we got to remember that is why sometimes we don't get everything we would like, because this is, of course, McFarlane's whole thing is to make these as good and as cheap as possible to mass produce them. Going down into the belt, it is nicely sculpted, but once again, there are so many versions of this belt. I mean, there's like the bracket kind, and then there's the pouches that you just do not know which version this is, but he just threw a bunch of different versions into one figure. Let's go ahead and take a look at the waist articulation. You do have side to side. We have that full tilt-a-whirl at the waist. Lower waist swivel. Upper chest swivel. So you can twist them. Get them in some pretty cool athletic poses. Now, he kind of has a crunch. It's not too much, but it is there. And you can, of course, lean them back. That's, what they're made for, is leaning back. So probably get them in some nice jumping rooftop to rooftop poses. Well, it's a nice sculpt and they do have cool detail. It's just probably not the version that you would want on this Tim Drake. But it is in my hands and this is what we're working with. Let's take a look at the shoulders. Now, this is where we start getting into it. Now, these arms that have sleeves, you can tell right away they might be a precursor to getting a different version of Tim Drake. I think like the 90s version where he has a more green and yellow scheme. So this just shows us that that's pretty much what they're setting up for, and they're making it the cheapest way they can. But I mean, McFarlane definitely needs to learn how to like swap parts that make a figure more accurate without having to remold them. But basically, are just using parts from different figures. I mean, I would prefer that instead of just jumping over these details. Kind of like talking about the boot cut for the infected Superman body. It never changes, even though the character changes. So that's where you could use like different parts to make figures more accurate to how they are in the comics. But you do have the bushing in there with the socket to get a lot of range. You have up and down, front to back, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. They look pretty good, but the bicep swivel is really unappealing with that sleeve cut. I just do not like that. Kind of reminds me of a thigh cut, but it's just something that I do not like. But straighten them out, and like I said, you could just tell that these arms are for a different version of Robin, but we just happen to get it in this red suit version. But moving down, he actually has some cool gauntlets with some pretty cool sculpted detail that we've never seen before, and the gloves actually match this same motif, and you do have some sweet wrist articulation with a really nicely hidden wrist ball joint. The other side, basically the same thing. Now you can get a pretty nice T-pose. Not really higher than that. You do hit the cape there a little bit, but that's passable. And of course you can move the arms above the head, which is always nice. Now going down to the bottom, once again, look at this belt. It has a nice belt. It's just that you don't know what version this one is, but it could use a little more paint. Some pretty nice trunks though, actually, with wrinkles. Let's check out the thigh swivel. Now, it's minimal, but I think if you were to heat this guy up or maybe mod him, but you could still move the foot a little bit right to left without a thigh cut. He does kick up pretty nicely. And of course, he kicks back all the way. Now, don't be scared if you move the trunks because they will go back to their original form. Cock out the knee. He does have that cool hip swivel. Straighten them out. Up and down at the ankle. Right to left. Rocker. And toe articulation. Now, before we go, let's take a complete look at the lower body. Smooth sculpt work on the legs without any sort of detail line work at all, which is kind of how the arms should have been. And then the boots are actually really nice. Now these are kind of like ninjutsu styled martial arts boots. I think they're called tabbies, where they have a toe cut in them. But of course, this is another thing where these are a certain version of Robin that has these. I mean, usually they just have your basic boot, but I don't know why they went with this style. But one thing you can't deny is the sculpt work with all the buckles and the kick pads, and the ankle joint that is sculpted out is really nice, which gives you like a cool clean line from the shins into the foot, into the boots. Pretty cool. Take a look at the bottom. No treads, but he does have some identifying marks. And those pretty cool ninjutsu style boots. Going up the back, nicely sculpted calves. Like once again, really no texture or lines in the lower body. Surprisingly, he does have like some pads or like armor on his butt. I'm guessing he has that to protect against any Gotham thugs trying to cop a feel. On the back, some cool sculpt work for the back. The pouches do go all the way around on the belt. Pretty nice back sculpture hidden underneath the cape. And then you do have your classic Robin black cape with the yellow underneath, which is really nice. Now, all in all, you can be happy with this figure if you were to just, look past the fact about the sleeves. But of course, me, I could not help myself, I had to go ahead and customize this guy. So let's check out the differences I made just to, get out of here. First off, at the head, I did paint the domino mask a little bit cleaner. Had to add a little bit of skin tone and then some black. Kind of made a mixture of matte and gloss to make a little satin black for the domino mask. And I made the eyes a little bit more small and more like kind of attitude looking, not so just round and like innocent looking. So I did that. I'll show you like a side by side so you can see the difference. On the hair, I added a little bit more black, like where there was more skin, to fill out the hairline around the ears and the back of the neck. And then I did add some blue highlights to the hair and a little bit of matte paint to break up the gloss from the regular plastic black, because it just looks so fake. And with the little bit of matte and the blue, it kind of mixes in and gives it a little bit more life. Now, another thing I did that I don't usually do is I added some different skin tones to the ears, under the nose, the chin, and then to the neck, and just like buffed it all in, like smoothed it all around. And it gives them a more natural, more realistic look without looking so plastic, because it has no different shades at all. I did paint his little ring on his clasp for his cape, which was just a little gold detail that I added. And then of course I added gold to the buckles on his chest for his armor, and then to the belt I also gave it like a nice high yellow gold wash, just to bring it out, to give it some life, because it looks so plastic and dull without any paint. Now let's take a look at the arms. Of course, I popped out those old arms. They were not going to work for me. And I really only replaced the shoulder and the bicep, and then I snapped it all back together with pins. Luckily, the arm did fit. You still have articulation, bicep swivel, the double jointed elbows. It all still works, and you still have a full range of motion, so that was really nice. Now the paint was kind of hard to match, because this is a really weird red. It's like a little bit orange, and then the tones are different. So what I ended up doing was getting it as close as I could for the review. But once this dries for a week or two, I'll probably try and hit it once more and try and match the whole legs and the whole armor part, and then paint it all the same color. That way it matches a little bit better. But for right now, this is cool. He's going to look awesome on the shelf. And either way you want to have him in his original form, or if you want to customize him, I just got lucky that I had a cool mix of, like, the arms aren't plain, they have a little bit of texture, but they do match with the rest of the upper body. So it kind of worked out to where, not too sculpted out, but it has enough to where it adds some texture and fits with the rest of the figure. Now you can put his batarang in his hand and he'll look awesome. And you can also play around with the bow staff to get different poses, some behind the back, some standard standing poses. I mean, he just works really well. Now, don't let anybody lie to you. This guy is highly articulated. I put him in a pose here, throwing the batarang, and you could really see like how much he can actually articulate. And I even used the toe joint, which people say is like not even usable, but basically here it is being used in this pose. And highly articulated figure. Get him in a lot of cool poses. Gonna have some fun with him. Of course, like usual, once I did all my paint changes, switched out the arms, I'm really having a lot of fun with him. Pretty cool little Tim Drake figure. Glad to have him in the collection. But before we go, let's go ahead and do some comparisons. Now, I wanted to do some comparisons with like younger, youthful characters from the DC Multiverse line. But first, I want to take a look at the classic DC Universe Classics Tim Drake version, which is kind of what this was supposed to be like. But that is a tiny 4.5-inch figure. Then let's take a look at him next to my custom hooded Damian Wayne. Love that little jerk. He does have a sheath on his back where he has a sword back there. Pretty cool. Then let's take a look at him next to Wallace West, the Kid Flash. Like I said, having like a cool, youthful, teen vibe. Of course, we got to put him up next to Superman John Kent with the repainted eyes that I did. I kind of like this figure. I mess around with him every once in a while. Not more than some of their figures, but he does grow on me a little bit. But anyways, guys, cool figure. I am really happy with him now that I've done some changes to him. He will be going into the collection. He looks awesome on the shelf. You guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.